Daredevil.
Yes.
Episode 4. My boy's back.
Frank is back.
My boy's back. We're gonna jump all over the place. Fuck chronological order. Let's talk about the end. I love superhero shows, right? Because yes, they have outlandish accent, they have ridiculous costumes, they have sometimes supernatural abilities. But you know me, I'm a big believer in people just don't respect the setting enough and realize how brilliant it can be for telling stories. Similarly to how we've talked very deeply about Invincible making you question yourself. Frank and Matt both having such strict rules about how they operate and being on complete opposite sides and having essentially philosophical debates is always Daredevil at its best, right?
Yeah.
This conversation in this episode is up there with the rooftop scene from Daredevil season 2.
Yes.
The acting is phenomenal. They've both become better actors since that scene. You can just see that. Phenomenal acting. I don't ever want to hear anyone ever again claim that superhero shows can't be superhero-y, like we saw in other parts of the episode, and serious and beautiful all at the same time. The acting was phenomenal. The bouncing back and forth, the way he refers to him as Matt and Red and Counselor, like to build into it. The mannerisms, it was some of the best acting we've seen in the MCU period. Films, TV, whatever. That is one of the Mount Rushmore scenes for me of what it's about. It is so good.
It was so well written.
Like
them sort of questioning each other's morals and both somewhat being right. And while they may not agree on each other's actions at times, they both actually sit at the same beliefs of things, which is what is always great about them too, and was in the Netflix show. And it's a pick up right back into that, and in a more polished way, because it's Disney, so good.
It's beautiful as well, because I think why the Punisher is so good, because there's characters similar to the Punisher, right? But the reason the Punisher is so good is because he doesn't bother himself with stuff as trivial as right and wrong. It's not about that. It's about what he feels is needed. People need to be safe from criminals, so he will handle that. He views it as a responsibility. It's an extension of him being a soldier, right? His job as a soldier was to fight and kill bad guys to protect people. He stopped doing that when he came home from being a soldier. And as a result of that, in his mind, his family died. So he goes back to doing that. It's not about whether he's doing good or bad. He literally doesn't care about whether you view it as good or bad. It needs to be done. These people will keep making things worse unless I stop them. Whereas Matt operates on the idea of good and bad. He wants to do good, which is why he struggles so much with the idea of being a vigilante across the original series and this. Because it's a case of, am I doing more good as Daredevil? Or if I focus all my attention on being a lawyer, can I do more good there?
Yeah, and
and that's why they work.
Yeah, we saw him mentally battling with that, with what Frank was pushing him with questions of being like, so Bullseye just gets to go to prison, get his slot, breathe the same air, and Matt's like, I did. What was that? I gave it to the system and I let the system do it. And Frank's like, yeah, but has it worked? You don't feel any better.
And that's the beauty of it.
Matt being like, he's got life. So then Frank goes, did what? And Foggy got life? And really pushing those questions, making Matt ask himself the hard questions of this whole situation.
And this is what I love about Frank, right? You've got a lot of people out, you've got a lot of characters who happily kill bad guys. But none, will argue for what they're doing as staunchly as Punisher. Because he's like, no, I'm doing it's like, no one wants to be the guy who has to pick up the dog shit, right?
Mm.
But it's got to be done. And that's how Punisher views himself. He's like, no one wants to do what I have to do, but someone's got to do it. And I'm willing to carry that burden. And he's just sick of being kind of judged for that by someone like Daredevil, who he views as actually, yeah, what you're doing is kind of helping, but if you just took on 5% of the way I do it, you'd get so much more accomplished.
I do think we're going to see him maybe pick up a bit of Matt's thinking of what's right and wrong, in the sense of like, I was surprised a little bit of how he responded to Matt telling him there's people using his logo, and he was like, "Oh, they're just fanboys," even though they're like he knew the. I think it's so like it's gonna sink in a bit of like he's gonna go, you know what? No, this isn't right. Cops are meant to be the good guy. Like they shouldn't be using my logo, and then. I think that's where we're going to see this Punisher that doesn't like a dirty cop using his logo.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think we're not going to actually really see how he feels about it till he's face to face with them, and we're going to get some like moral.
I think he's going to discover a cop using the Punisher logo hurting or killing an innocent person, and that'll be the moment the switch goes in his head, and he's like, right, this has to stop.
Yeah, or it's going to be like he's going to bump into one, they're going to fanboy, and then he's going to witness them kill the wrong person or something, and he's going to be like, the fuck are you doing?
The only other thing I want to talk about before we move on to the rest of the episode, because it is genuine fucking art. The last kind of montage of the episode.
Yes.
Between Fisk and Matt.
The mirroring.
The squealing I did like a little girl, right? Is you've got King. So this entire episode is both of them struggling with their true selves, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the episode, you see Fisk like visibly getting angry and then like calming himself down, because what he wants to do instinctively is crush the person's head. But he calms himself down and tries to do what he's training himself to do. Matt wants to beat the shit out of that dirty cop.
Yeah.
He's even antagonizing the cop to try and get the cop to hit him so that he can hit him back.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to stop himself from doing that. When he goes to see Frank, he hits Frank instinctively. And then he apologizes because he doesn't want to be that person. And then, after all that build-up, you get the Kingpin, who is now being good and pure, descending into the darkness with the stairs, right? That shot of Kingpin coming from the light down into the darkness to reveal his true self, gorgeous. What do we have straight after that? Matt going from the bottom darkness, ascending up the brightly lit stairs, up onto the roof to where he's like literally one ascending down and one ascending up to their true position, because they are ironically the devil is going towards heaven because of just like the symbolism of it all. And then you get to see their true selves. Kingpin back downstairs eating an unhealthy massive meal and being greedy and enjoying the suffering of someone he's put in a cell.
Yep.
And then you've got Matt practicing as Daredevil, getting his equipment out. Like that parallels it fucking gorgeous. I know people have their issues with the first 2 episodes, but you cannot tell me this show isn't a masterpiece.
Well, they've done this from the get-go this season. Like in that first episode, it ended with the blue lighting of Kingpin on the top and the red lighting on Matt on the street. And we saw that like they've been mirroring it the whole way through this season. And this is just the next step of that, of like you say, them starting to show they're giving in to going back to their old selves for different reasons and whatnot. I mean, we talked about it last week. I brought up like we were shown Fisk having bloody knuckles. What does this mean? Is he actually being shady, or is it just him training and doing something and maybe it's nothing? It was clearly him actually has been shady. He's just been hiding it. The meal is even better when you consider several times when we're shown Fisk with Vanessa and they're having breakfast or something, he's eating like egg whites and nothing else. Like he is having the most minimal meal, to which you're like, oh, he's changed. He's very like having these minimal meals. Like he is a completely different character to what he was. So then it shows, no, he's just quietly being greedy. He's just eating that meal in quiet while listening to this person that seemingly vanished. Oh no, he put him in a cell and he's just punishing him that way. Meanwhile, Matt has his secret little lair on the roof, his little wardrobe hidden away in whatever that little roof access room was.
I assume it's like a utility closet, because I know a lot of buildings in New York have like a rooftop garden or something like that. So maybe it's like where people can put like their brooms and shit.
But then him showing that, and I reckon he's probably still been doing that regularly, just not being.
Exercise is key.
Yeah, and like, but keeping up with his form, and like, it's probably like his regular thing to do. It's just we're now getting to see them visibly showing. It's showing us them both doing it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
No, the all of that was so cool. The little tease of all the different suits as well.
Just so gorgeous. But the core of this episode is Kingpin trying to get his like Red Hook plans going through.
Yes.
And Matt has been given he's trying to deal with the death of Hector.
Yes.
And also he's been given another pro bono case he needs to go deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say it now. I'm just going to mention it again. Having recently binged all of the old Netflix shows, one thing that always felt off, and I've complained about this in the MCU at times as well, is how it's kind of doesn't want to be comic book shows, right? And what I mean by that is like they talk about like the big green dude. They don't make like comic book style references. They don't like using the code names. They don't like doing any of that. And then in this show, we've had the talk of like, he didn't even have his magical amulet on him.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this, we have him going, could it have been a scroll? Brilliant. And then later on, you have the Punisher calling him Bullseye.
Yeah.
Like they're referring to them as like the code names, which has always been a big problem in the MCU. They don't like using the code names because it's not serious enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then walking that back a little bit, it doesn't take out the realism at all. It just makes it feel like it's actually a superhero-filled world.
Yeah.
And it's adding so much stuff that I never considered. I loved after Matt talks to his client, and his client's like, no, you've got to get me probation. You've got to get me probation. And he goes up there and he like flirts with the ADA. Yeah. Again, love the comic book accuracy, because I've said it once, I've said it a million times. Matt Murdock is a Catholic whore. Flirting with her, debating the rights and wrongs, and does this prison system work? Love how this show is not pulling its punches on the opinion of the police and the criminal justice system. Does incarceration actually work as a deterrent? Clearly not. This man's got a rap sheet longer than God himself with 30-day increments. It's clearly not helping him.
No.
And then obviously the phenomenal quote of, they'd rather spend 5 times the money locking me up for 30 days than feeding me.
Yeah. And Matt being like, at first kind of a bit pushbacky on this guy, to when the guy finally lays out what he's going through, and Matt's like, well, can't argue with him because he knows he's right. He's just trying to get him the best deal he can.
And I think that's what's I like to think that's what's going to bring Matt back to being Daredevil. It's not going to be I need to take down big bad criminals. It's going to be a case of the system I believe in is failing people.
Yeah.
It's got police officers who are abusing the system and committing crimes, and then someone who steals a bag of cereal, they want to send to prison for a month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be, he's gonna repeatedly be shown the system that he keeps saying to himself and to people, I'm trusting the system, and he's gonna keep seeing the system fail. That it's like, it then goes, am I just lying? Like, it's going to make him self-reflect on like, well, if I'm believing this thing and it's not working, like, what the fuck am I even believing in? Sort of attitude, and that's going to push him back. I really enjoyed as well the Latvia stuff that was mentioned.
I was desperate for it to be Latveria.
I think it's meant, I feel like that's what they're sort of hinting towards.
I don't know if it is or what, but it would have been really cool if it had been Latveria. But I get why they've not done it. We don't have any acknowledgement of Latveria in the current MCU or of Doom, so I get why they didn't want to just do it in a TV show, but it would have been really cool if they made it Latveria.
I mean, if it is, and this is just them setting the little groundwork for like this place exists, I mean, I'm all for it. The White Tiger setup as well with his niece, like, obviously we're not going to see that anytime soon.
We might see it in season 2.
Okay, but like, yeah, that clearly set up of like, oh, here's his niece. She's got a little bit more airtime now, so you know who's going to take on the mantle.
It's going to be really cool, man.
Also, is it Daniel, the young lad that's Fisk's little...
Mm-hmm.
He clearly sees him a bit of a son, bit of like this super loyal lackey.
I'm really curious about what the fuck's going on there.
I think he likes this idea of someone being this loyal to him and sees him a bit of as a son. The problem is, I think he's going to screw up again, and Fisk is going to end up showing his old ways and maybe crushing his head. To which that guy's then Daniel's going to kind of, this picture of who Fisk is going to be shattered. And he's not going to be able to cope with this idea that this person he's just idolized is a monster and is probably now going to like try and kill him or something. I think that's what's going to happen there.
If we don't get another parallel scene of Matt suiting up as Daredevil for the first time, as Fisk like crushes someone's skull, I don't want it. Because at this point, with the amount of parallels they've done, the notion of Fisk committing like his first murder as Matt suits up as Daredevil again is beautiful, because they both promised each other they won't slip back into their old habits, and the notion of them both like getting that first hit again at the same time would be.
Do you know
cinema.
what it'll be? It'll be a shot of Fisk putting on his white suit as Matt puts on his own suit, and then we'll get a shot of Matt punching up his first bad guy while Fisk beats up his first.
And obviously, the other big thing this episode, we got a bit of Muse.
Oh, we did. Muse
at the beginning and end of the episode.
Teased and set up that he's about and stealing people and harvesting their blood, I presume, for artwork.
I love how creepy they've made him. Genuinely creepy. Jenna was not enjoying him, not because she thought it was bad. She was like, "Oh no, he's the way his eyes come through the mask." They've done costumes, done a phenomenal job. The actor's done a phenomenal job. The way the light was low, and it felt like a horror villain. Right? This is what I always talk about. Some of the best villains are villains that feel like they're in the wrong genre. And they do that with Muse in the comics. In the comics, Muse can't be detected by Matt. Matt can't sense him. He's like a void of it almost, which is what he almost has to use to keep track of him during a fight. Like the lack of anything. And that's really funny to me, because it's like Muse just being able to disappear from someone who should be impossible to disappear from makes him an anomaly, because there's no real evidence that he has superpowers.
Yes.
So him being like a horror villain inside a comic book works really well. So him having this creepy underground base where you got bodies on meat hooks and he's draining blood for his paintings and stuff. He's just so like vampire-y and creepy. It's so good.
Maybe he's supplying blood to some local vampires that maybe a certain blade is handling.
Maybe if that Blade film would come out when it was supposed to, they could have done that.
I do
such a good episode.
Muse is going to be the big part of the next episode.
I imagine these next two parts are going to end with him dealing with Muse.
Yeah, there's going to be Muse kind of revealed to the general public, and Matt finding out about him. Matt probably having to deal with him as Daredevil. Still intrigued to see what happens when Matt finds out his new girlfriend, who's pretty much already moved in, they like to move quick, is the therapist for Fisk. I love if she pushes for him and Fisk to sit down for therapy.
Well, it's funny because like she knows he has history with Fisk as well.
But if she tries to sit down because she's like, well, I'm seeing him make a change, I think you should sit down and talk with him. And he's like, hang on, you're doing therapy for Fisk? And then he maybe agrees to it. And like, she's getting the way they're talking about each other, she's like, this is a strange lawyer versus criminal relationship that's going on here.
But I know people had mixed opinions after the first episodes. If you're watching this and you kind of weren't sure after the first episodes 3 and 4 are literally so good. So good. I think this show is as good as it has ever been.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited to see where it goes. I hope we get a lot more Frank.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see the kind of descent of both Fisk and Matt back into their roles as Kingpin and Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
I love having secondary villains. Yes, Fisk is the main villain of the show, but we know Bullseye escapes at some point or gets released at some point or something goes on there. Muse is cutting about.
The dirty cops.
This is what, like, we spoke about Invincible a couple of weeks ago. You've got to respect comic book media is different.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing that we should take from comic book media when we convert to live action, though, is the way we tell our stories.
Mm.
And very rarely is that as linear as the way we are doing it currently, when they just focus on one villain and they've just got to get this thing done.
Yeah.
Normally, you've got a bigger villain plotting in the background, in this case, Fisk.
Mm-hmm.
And while the hero's kind of waiting for them to do something that they can actually do something about, they're dealing with smaller but still pressing issues, like dirty cops and a serial killer bleeding people dry. that they're like dealing with while they're waiting to see what the bad guy's up to. And that they've set that kind of up beautifully, and I hope they continue to play with that idea, and I hope it continues to be received really well, so that we can then go, right, now keep doing it.
Yeah, I agree.